Welcome back to the Paper Gain Show. I'm Johnathan Rankin, joined by my co-host Matt McGee. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Good to be back.
Today we're going to be diving into how to recession-proof your life, and then we're going to finish off today by going through a top 5 list of things that we want to happen by the end of the year and 5 things that we think are actually going to happen by the end of the year. So I'm excited to see what you've got to what you came up with, but let's start off with we talk about recession proofing your life. You know, the recession's been a big topic over the past couple of weeks since Tariff Day. What is that day called again? Was it
I just blanked on it. Yeah.
Initiation Day? Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but Tariff Day, as we'll call it. There's been thoughts and talks of recession and the probability of a recession increasing. We saw the Atlanta Fed release their first quarter GDP, and that was actually a negative print that they've got. So all this talk of a recession and all this talk of consumers slowing down, and it leads people that are investing for retirement and just investing in general to start becoming concerned because that headline of recession is something that we've seen so many times, over the past number of years. Uh, we had one in COVID, I guess you'll call it that, but I think that was more of a man-made recession. And then 22 was just a bear market. We never saw an actual economic recession. And I think why it's been important for investors is because when you look at the performance of the U.S. equity market, there's difference between bear markets with a recession and bear markets without a recession. And ones that have a recession are typically in that 30 plus negative range versus bear markets that just have no recession. So are you hearing some of this recession fear from clients, and what are you saying to the clients if they're worried about a possible recession?
Yeah. Liberation Day. I think that's what it was
There we go.
on April 3rd. Uh,
Thank you.
yeah. Hearing it a little bit, it's definitely picked up. The concern has. It definitely felt it a couple weeks ago, and then we've had some better weeks since then, which has been very helpful. And the past 3 days have been up days based on recording this on the 24th. Uh, so that's been helpful, but definitely pick up on that concern more and more. And so, how to address that, how to recession proof your life. Uh, like we've talked about many times before on previous episodes, always go back to starting with cash and what the objective of your accounts are, your time frame, all of that, and making sure that you got a good plan there first and foremost. So starting there, just making sure that the individual needs are met for the foreseeable future, if that's 3, 6, 12, 18 months, if, depending on the individual, if they are in distribution phase, just walking through like this is why you hold bonds, and you've got say 5 years worth of bonds based on your monthly consumption. Like I think the if we have a 5-year bear market, I don't know what we would do. That would be extraordinarily long, but you never know. And so just walking people through that process. If somebody's still working, utilizing that where possible to uh, get an investment plan. We're definitely not trying to time the market, but being thoughtful and putting new money to work where you can.
Yeah, I think for me, what I've talked to clients about is what's the biggest fear with a recession? So you hear this and people say, well, a recession's coming up. And I want to know what's their biggest fear? Why does this matter to you? Is it, and a lot of people, they hear, okay, a recession's coming up, but they don't necessarily know what that actually means for them. And I think, to me, a lot of it goes back to probably what they experienced in 2008, where we had
Yeah.
this massive bear market. There was the fear of our financial system collapsing, and I think we saw unemployment just go through the roof during that time. So all of these things happen simultaneously. People were wondering, is my money safe in the bank? And all of these different factors. But it really comes down to, what is your biggest fear with a recession? Because if
Yeah.
you're retired, my point is always, I think the biggest risk for a recession is somebody's employment that needs the employment. That's
Yeah.
that to me is number one risk. Obviously, investments in the market and things like that are subject to fluctuation during those times and are likely to be more volatile. But volatility happens with or without a recession. I mean, we're seeing that. We've seen that a number of times. But when I think about, if you're investing like you should be for retirement and you've got an asset allocation, your asset allocation, like you said, might have 4, 5, 6, 7 years of fixed income, cash, things like that on the sideline. So if the biggest risk is your employment, well, that's where I'd start, is making sure that you've got enough in reserves to make sure that if you did lose your job, that you can cover your lifestyle for a long period of time without having to tap into retirement accounts. That's to me the the biggest detriment that I've seen people go through is they lose their job, and because of a lack of an emergency fund, they have to tap into their 401k, which, if you're under 59 and a half, obviously you not only on top of taxes, you now have to do a 10% penalty. So you're just eating away so much of the savings that you look up and you go, I had to restart my entire retirement savings all because of this recession. But I mean, if you're retired, I know we talked about this before, but aren't you almost okay with a recession? Obviously, the risk assets aside, assuming that you have money set aside in fixed assets that can provide your lifestyle for a few years, is a recession really a bad thing? Because things are going to get cheaper for those that are retired, and they're going to have more flexibility of where to spend their money if they're in that spending phase.
Yeah. I would say for somebody that is retired, like where they get very burned, and we haven't seen this in a very long time, is more stagflation, where uh, if you
Oh, you
are,
brought up the S word, that the
yeah,
whole
I
S
know
word that
that
everybody's
everybody's
talking about.
afraid of.
You had to
Uh,
do it.
yeah, I know, I know. I feel like it's 2022 all over again. That I was terrified of that.
That was transitory. That was the word of
Yeah,
2022.
that's right.
Transitory.
Uh, But I would say that's where you become most burned. But I don't. th- I don't think we're headed towards that. Like I think inflation may pick up a little bit, but um, I don't know. I guess I just haven't seen it. We'll see in once we get the next CPI and PPI numbers on inflation. But with the energy costs coming down so much, that's a huge chunk of it. I guess rent and some of those other ones, we can experience it, and you experience it a lot day to day just because you get groceries and gas on a regular basis, but um, rent and energy costs, last time I looked, were a huge portion of those numbers. And I think at least energy costs should be still coming down, but we'll see. You want to hit on the five things you want, and then,
Oh
uh,
yes, I'm
yeah,
looking
all
forward
right,
to this. So
go
this
for it.
is the top 5 things that we want to happen over the next 9 months. Not that we think they're going to happen or that
Yeah,
we're saying these are going to happen, but what would I want? Okay, so these are in no particular order. I didn't rate these from, so in no particular order. Obviously, I want tariffs to be over fast. I want this whole song and dance with this tariff trade. I just want tariffs, that word, to go away. I just want that to, I'm over the tariff, whole discussion. I don't care whether you think they're good, bad, otherwise. I'm just ready for them to be a thing of the past.
yeah,
Whether that means we have a resolution because we have trade agreements with certain countries, whatever that looks like, I just want it over quickly. Um, for our retirement folks out there, I would love a Social Security funding bill, some way to shore up Social Security that eliminates that question of whether or not Social Security is going to go bankrupt in 2035. With the trust fund being depleted and all the headlines out there, I would love them to figure out a way to just create a way to solidify that program, whatever that looks like. The next one, I would love for Elon Musk to fade into the distance, just to stop. I don't. I'm overseeing him. I'm overhearing about him. Uh, I am so indifferent to Elon that I just wish that he would just fade away. Um, let's see. I would like for rates to. I want rates to come down for housing affordability. So I'd love to see housing become more affordable. And then my last one is I want so badly, because I am a Apple product user, I want Siri to become useful. That's what I want. I want it to be so integrated in the way that they promise that it would, where you can ask it something and it'll search through all your photos and find you that one that you took that you just remembered, you thought about, you don't remember the day. I want to be able to look through all your different apps. I want to do what it's supposed to do. I personally don't care about the privacy aspect. If I have an app on my phone, I'm assuming they have access to my whole phone. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I want that to be
Yeah.
useful. So that's the 5 things I want.
All right. Similar to you, I want a deal with China on the tariffs. Um, my second one was tariff related as well, but I changed that. Uh, with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I would like it to be similar or not a huge change where you have to spend like a month trying to figure out everything that changed and how it impacts all your various clients. That would be amazing. Um, uh, you hit on like the rates. It would be great to see like the housing market and just real estate in general stabilize and kind of get back on normal footing. It would be awesome to just given how like intertwined I feel like markets and the government are at this point. It'd be great for everybody. It would help your rates come down to have some sort of path to a balanced budget, which we'll see if that happens. And definitely not a prediction, but I would love to see the stock market, call it the S&P 500, up 10% this year.
A nice
Not
10% clip would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice, especially after 2 big years, um, and with how volatile it's been. I think it's a reasonably optimistic hope to just a modest 10%.
So out of your five, which one do you think has the best probability of becoming a reality?
Um, I I feel like I don't know how comprehensive or if it solves any long-term issues, but a deal with China on trade.
That
I think that that's maybe the most realistic, just because I feel like they need us and we need them. So maybe I'm oversimplifying it.
no, I
Um,
think
I,
that's a good point.
I think
I'm looking
the
at my five and I
least
don't know.
like the headlines can be overly negative, so try to block those out. Um,
You said the least,
least
which one is the
likely,
least likely?
a balanced budget. Just given that we've been blowing through like 2 trillion or so in excess spending. Um, so I would say that's the least likely, and then maybe right below that, I have no idea what the housing market will do. I imagine the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I imagine they do get, I think they will extend it. I'm sure there has to be changes. There always is changes, and so those are the main ones. And who knows where the market ends up.
Yeah. Well, I think out of my five, the most realistic probable one has got to be that rates come down to help with housing
Yeah.
affordability. That's the only one. Everything else, I think that tariffs are going to just drag on for a while. But what do I know? I think the Social Security, that funding bill, or is to try to
Yeah, that's
solidify
not
that
happening
program.
anytime
That's
soon.
happened in 2034.
Yeah, last minute.
Siri won't be
Apple,
useful for a long time.
yeah, like they last headline I saw, like they extended it to next year is when like it would be out. Like I just yeah, Apple's lost their way. That's a totally separate conversation.
All right. So
We
what do you think's going to happen? So now these are your five predictions for the next, what, 7, 8 months or 8 months till the end of the year. What do you think's going to happen?
I mean, I already really kind of went through mine of what I think will happen. I do think there's some form of a deal with China. I think the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act does get extended, but I'm sure there'll be changes to it on the margin, if you will. Um, Housing market. I have no idea. I mean, we saw this morning that new home sales were down or yeah, new home sales were down like 6% almost. Um, Path to a balanced budget. I have to imagine even with Elon fading out of the whole Doge thing, I imagine it continues, which might honestly be more productive when it just gets out of the headlines and they just get to work. So that could be a good thing. He should start fading into the background. Um, and my prediction for the market, maybe not up 10%, but slightly up for the year.
All right.
Who knows on that one?
So here's my big grand predictions for the next 8 months. I think we're going to see a recession, as we all know. I've been in that camp of, hey, this is happening. I think that's going to happen. Um, I did. It's so funny because I actually had one on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. My prediction is it's going to be a last minute extension, and there's going to be so many modifications that when you look at it, most people's taxes are going to go up, aside from a small sliver of people. But they're going to sell it to us as if the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was extended. But I just don't think it's going to be as favorable as it was last time. Uh,
Yeah.
this is a big one. I probably am so off base here, but I actually think that Elon's going to step down from Tesla and he will run Doge full time. I feel like he's coming into our lives even more. And
No,
so
no. That would be such wild. That'd be like a 180 from, which I mean, crazier things have happened, but I think, I
I
mean,
well and I where I'm coming at from that is at some point shareholders are going to hold him accountable for the lack of performance from Tesla. I mean, we just saw them come out, release their earnings and they obviously disappointed. And because of that, he said, I'm going to take a step back from Doge. I'm going to go back to Twitter, or not Twitter, but go back to Tesla full time, or more than part time, I guess, because to run a mega corporation is part time job apparently. But I
yeah,
think that at a certain point, uh, I just think that that market has become for EVs has become so much more challenging and more crowded than where it was a few years ago. That if shareholders are expecting him to get back to where they were, it's going to be harder because now there's more competition. There's more competition from Chinese companies, even US companies, and there's just so much more competition in the EV space, especially with everything going on with China, that I feel like that's going to disappoint shareholders. And it's not necessarily going to be something that he maybe wants to do, but I think that there could be a a faction of shareholders that want him to step down and put in a full-time CEO, because at the same time he still runs Twitter, he still runs SpaceX, he still runs
yeah,
that boring company that's building tunnels. So
yeah,
at a certain point, if you're a shareholder and you go, you've got you've got my money, I'm a part owner in this company. I want a part owner that's full time, and so that's part
yeah.
of the reason why.
I agree with that. I just don't think he would go back
I
to Doge.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Uh,
then I've got I do think housing affordability is still going to be an issue, but for different reasons. I think with the recession, we're going to see rates come down, but because of that, we're also going to see unemployment rise and a struggling consumer, and that's going to create the housing issues continuing. And then my last one, this is the saddest prediction that I've got, and it makes me it's to me, unfortunately, it's so much more depressing than even thinking about a recession. The San Francisco 49ers will continue to disappoint me. They're going to continue to disappoint, and it's just been another year of sadness. So those are my 5 big predictions of the
yeah.
year. So we'll
All
see what
right.
happens. But Matt, it was always fun to hear your thoughts. And if you're listening to this and you're worried about a recession, you're worried about how your life and portfolio are going to be impacted if we go through any sort of downturn in the economy, that's what we're here for. We're here to help out with that. Obviously, there's some of the stuff we try to make as lively as possible, but at the end of the day, it's still finances, it's still money, it's still serious, and we take that very serious, and so we will help craft any sort of plan that you need to make sure that you feel confident in any sort of economy. So don't hesitate to reach out. But with that, Matt, it's always fun. I look forward to doing this again next week.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll talk to you then.
Have a good one.
You too.